Dope.
What it do, baby?
Are you so?
Make sure y'all leave a comment. Hey, let me know how y'all spring break was, if y'all had a spring break.
This happened spring break about 4 years ago. My girlfriend Anissa wanted to do something low-key. She'd been talking about a cabin trip for months, just somewhere to disappear for a few days with no obligations.
I don't know if I ever met Anissa.
Her brother Hunter was on break from school and was staying with us at the time anyway, so he came too. I found a place online. It was pretty deep in the woods, which was the point, and it was cheaper than it had any right to be. I remember thinking that briefly, and then not thinking about it again. We got there Friday night around dinner time. The place felt genuinely cut off. You couldn't see the road you'd driven on from the front porch,
a crib like
which
that?
I actually liked at
Like
the
in
time.
the cut?
There was an outbuilding off to the side of the property, like a large shed which was padlocked. Hunter played with the lock for a second and said it looked new, like it had been swapped out recently. I said it was probably just the owner keeping equipment in there. We didn't really think much of it. It was getting dark, so we went inside and immediately started making dinner. That first night was fine. We had a few drinks on the porch and went to bed pretty early. I can't remember exactly when, but it started lightly raining at some point. The woods were really loud, which was a major surprise, at least to me. It was this constant wall of insects and frogs, and something about it was actually really calming. I do want to mention that at some point before falling asleep that night, I heard something bigger moving around out there, although I figured it was just a deer. I fell asleep not long after that. What woke me up was a sound like something hitting the side of the cabin. I don't know what time it was exactly, let's just say 2. I froze there in bed for a minute, wondering if what I heard was just part of my dream or not. Right when I was about to try falling back asleep, I heard another thump which sounded identical to the first one. I rolled over to see if Anissa was awake, but she wasn't. So it was up to me to investigate.
Yo, I wake up at like 5 or 6.
There was a bear poking around out there.
Almost
it would have been
every
better to
night
know about
to
it
go
than
pee.
to not know. So I reluctantly got out of bed and grabbed one of our flashlights. I didn't want to go outside, but the outdoor visibility through the cabin windows was limited. Despite that, I noticed what appeared to be footsteps on the ground near the outbuilding, which was incredibly alarming. Those footprints could not have been ours because none of us had been outside the cabin after the rain had started, at least not to my knowledge. I reasoned that it was possible Hunter had gone out there without me realizing, so I figured I'd ask him in the morning. Still, I was pretty confident that he wouldn't have done that, which made the situation all the more eerie. The footprints didn't look like an animal's, although they were too far away to tell for sure, and if I had been unwilling to go outside earlier, there was absolutely no chance I was doing so after seeing what I saw. I made sure the place was locked up and went back to sleep.
Get the strap.
Unfortunately, the night was far from over. I woke up a few hours later to knocking on the front door, which is one of the most terrifying things I can imagine waking up to. Hearing that knocking meant there was a stranger out there, which actually got my heart going a little bit. It was just so late. I couldn't think of a good reason why someone would be knocking on a cabin door in the middle of nowhere at 4 a.m. The knocking woke up Anissa, who was about 10 times more scared than I was. I had to do something. So I walked over to the door. Before I could even announce myself, the person on the other side said he was a forest ranger and that there'd been some kind of incident in the area.
You don't got
he needed to do a welfare check.
Like,
I paused
the window right there. Like, come on, bro.
Mostly out of fear, but it was obvious he already knew I was there. I told him we were all good and didn't need to be checked up on, saying I just wanted to get back to sleep. I thought that would do the trick, because he paused for a little while before saying anything. But then, instead of leaving, he said he'd need to ask us a few questions. I was instantly suspicious, and I was almost fully confident the person on the other side of the door was not any kind of law enforcement.
Yeah, it wasn't a cop.
At that point, Hunter had woken up too and was standing behind me. I whispered to him to call the police, saying I'd stall the guy at the door. I went back and forth with him, giving him nothing answers without telegraphing my suspicion. After a little back and forth, Hunter walked up to me and whispered that the police said no rangers had been dispatched to the area. That's what I suspected, but hearing Hunter actually vocalize it made my heart rate kick up again. I was scared and downright panicking at that point. It was 4 a.m. We were truly in the middle of nowhere, and some guy was banging on the door pretending to be a ranger. I don't know how, but it felt like the person on the porch could sense my fear, because he raised his voice and started banging on the door a little harder. I told the person I wasn't going to open up, and I wasn't going to answer any questions, which only seemed to anger him. He started demanding I open the door, threatening to kick it down and telling me I'd be arrested for failure to comply. That's when Anissa screamed at him to go the fuck away, which only made things worse. He started kicking the door, and when it didn't give, he stomped around the cabin. I yelled at Anissa to go lock herself in the bathroom, which she did. Hunter and I grabbed some knives from the kitchen and just
Anissa should have shut the hell up. That's what Anissa should have did.
I was beyond terrified, but I had no choice but to prepare for a fight. This guy meant us harm. This guy was trying to break into our cabin and kill us. Before I could react, one of the windows shattered into a million pieces.
Oh shit!
That guy had thrown a rock through it.
Did he climb through it though?
Jump through, but he didn't. It was the tensest moment of my life.
He would have got.
After what felt like forever, with Hunter and me just staring at a broken window.
You see a dude trying to climb in the window, you're gonna take advantage of it.
I'll fast forward to this next part. The police searched the area, but miraculously, they couldn't find the guy. Hunter was furious. He was practically yelling at the officers that the freak had been on the property less than a minute before they arrived, so he had to be close by still. The officers said there was nothing they could do, and advised us to just pack up and leave.
Cops.
So, that's exactly what we did. It's not like we had much of a choice. But Hunter wouldn't let go of how incompetent those officers were being. It was only after the fear and adrenaline wore off, and we were driving away, that I realized how truly insane what just happened was. For someone to even know about that cabin in the first place was so unlikely. It was like they planned it. And what they even wanted was a mystery in and of itself.
Crazy.
All in all, it was an extremely uncomfortable and unsettling experience.
What would y'all have done? What would y'all have done? I would have been, I hope he climb out through that window. Come on.
This happened back in 2016 when I was a senior in college. I was in a frat, TKE, and one of the traditions that came with being in Greek life, at least at our school, was that you spent spring break with your brothers and whatever sorority or sororities you were affiliated with.
American Pie.
The groups were typically huge, usually 30 or 40 people, and everyone packed into the same rental or resort for the whole week. I won't say it was the most wholesome experience you could have in your early 20s, but I also won't pretend I didn't have a ridiculous amount of fun doing it. That particular year, the plan was Acapulco. I don't remember whose idea it was originally, but within a few weeks, we had something like 40 people booked at this resort on the Pacific coast.
That looked nice.
The main character in this story isn't actually me. It's my buddy Sahil. I'm gonna try putting this as nicely as possible. He was the kind of person who, no matter what situation you put him in, was gonna find a way to make it louder and more complicated than it needed to be.
He don't like loud
with total
people.
affection, because Sahil was genuinely one of the best people I knew in college.
Loud people either.
He just had absolutely zero self-preservation instincts
I like
and no
loud
impulse
people,
control,
but they just
which was
be
especially
loud in the
problematic
wrong
because he was
moments.
incredibly impulsive.
Yep,
We were
and
maybe
impulsive.
3 or 4 days into the trip when a group of us decided to go to the local clubs. It was a great time, right up until Sahil, true to form, started scanning the room looking for someone who could get him something. Let's just say, stronger than whatever was in his glass. I'm not going to bother spelling things out, but it shouldn't be too hard to connect the dots here. It was a terrible idea. We were in a foreign country in a city with a reputation that wasn't exactly clean.
Or louder.
Plus, nobody in our group spoke any Spanish. I told him to drop it. A couple of the other guys said the same thing, and Sahil said he would. But I knew he wouldn't. I had been through his shit too many times. We kept an eye on him for a while, but the place was genuinely enormous, and after a while, we kind of stopped tracking where he was. He was a grown-ass man. I wasn't about to waste my night babysitting him.
You could tell he was
I figured
annoyed.
he was somewhere in the crowd. Sahil disappearing into a crowd was not unusual. I went about my night with my other friends, and it was a great time. Sahil never turned up, though, which I found stranger and stranger the later it got. I don't remember what triggered it, but one second we were all drinking and partying, having a good time, and the next, we were all frantically trying to contact Sahil.
Oh shit.
He wasn't answering anyone's text messages, and when we called his phone, it went straight to voicemail, meaning it was
He
dead.
got kidnapped.
That wasn't good.
Taken
Sahil may have
for
been
his
a crazy
organs.
dude, but he was an organizational freak. He
That's
wouldn't just
why
let
they
his
say
phone die like that.
organization when I say organ.
After a little while longer, he made the call to leave. Odds were he was back at the resort, and we'd find him passed out in his bed. The sidewalk outside was a mess of people trying to get cabs all at once. So a few of us walked about a block and a half before pulling out phones to call a driver.
Are cabs
It
still
was probably
like
around 1 in the
relevant?
morning. So we're just standing there waiting on a driver, when who do we see but Sahil, stumbling towards us out of the darkness. We ran up to him, and it was immediately obvious that something seriously bad happened. He was a complete wreck. His shirt was torn almost fully off, and his face was completely swollen.
Organs?
Not to mention the fact that he was limping. We
Damn,
got him
he
into the
just
car
got-
and back
he
to the
was probably
resort.
loud as shit.
A couple guys kept asking him what happened, and he kept saying he'd explain later. It wasn't until we were back in one of the rooms that he finally started talking. Here's what he told us. He found a guy near the bar. The short Mexican guy who didn't speak much English. He had a friend with him who was supposedly doing the translating. Sahil made it clear what he was looking for, and the guy understood.
What was you
Sahil
looking
told
for?
us he was reluctant right away because something felt off about the translator specifically, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Then the short guy pulled out a small sample and offered it to him right there, and Sahil tried it. He said it was good, and that's kind of where his
What'd he
judgment
try?
evaporated. After that, the short guy said he couldn't do business inside the club and told Sahil to come outside with him.
Nose ring.
Sahil knew he shouldn't have gone, but he went anyway. Which, I mean, what do you even say to that? They walked out a side exit. There was a car waiting just outside the door.
Oh yeah.
Before
that's
Sahil really
right.
understood what was happening, they were already pulling him into the back seat. They drove.
Take his organs, bro.
He said it felt like maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but he was panicking and not exactly thinking straight, so he honestly wasn't sure. What he was sure about was that they went rummaging through his pockets the second the car started moving. They robbed him, and when he tried to resist, they beat him senseless. They destroyed his phone and stripped him of everything of value. What saved him was that at some point during the drive, one of the guys asked him why there were so many Americans in the city right now, and Sahil, without really thinking about it, explained that he was there on spring break with dozens of other students from the same university who were all staying at the same resort. He had
was
no
robbing
idea at the
spring
time that he was
breakers.
essentially talking his way out of being killed or trafficked. The two guys went back and forth in Spanish for a
Traffic
while
is
after
crazy.
that. Then the car pulled over and they threw him out. He landed on some random road he didn't recognize and just started walking. He didn't know where he was, so he had no choice but to just walk in the direction he thought the car had driven, and by some miracle, it turned out to be the correct decision. I really don't know what would have happened to him had he not run into us, or if he had left the club 20 minutes sooner. We debated calling the police for about 3 seconds before unanimously deciding that was probably the worst idea for everyone involved, Sahil included. Besides the guys in our immediate
Sahil.
group, nobody at the resort ever found out what happened.
Sahil. Dumbass little boy. Oh, this gonna be a good one.
I've been keeping this one bottled up for quite a while now.
Oh shit,
This
I knew
happened
it.
during spring break of my junior year. I graduated a while ago, so we're going back a few years here. I should mention that I'm kind of a paranoid person. I've just always been naturally observant, skeptical, and cynical.
Yeah,
Those
it's nothing
honestly
wrong with
aren't the
that, bro.
healthiest traits to have.
But
I
you
end up
you
spending a lot of
gotta
time
play it cool.
overthinking and worrying about things that don't matter.
Oh, alright,
and I
never
can't
mind.
control
You gotta
it.
stop doing that.
My ex-girlfriend Anna had this friend named Lena.
And
Lena was the type of girl who
the
always
Lena.
knew where the party was and was plugged into
Shouts out
every
to all
group
the
chat and
Spanish
social
people,
circle
bruh.
imaginable, which is why
Shouts
it
out
wasn't
to all
surprising
my-
in the slightest when
my
she approached Anna with a
Latinas
spring
and
break
Latinos.
plan. She said a girl she knew had told her about a lake house trip out in the Ozarks. According to Lena, a bunch of people from that girl's sorority and some of the affiliated frats were renting this big house on the water for the week. Pretty standard to be completely honest. I wasn't exactly the spring break type, but Anna really wanted to go, and I didn't have a reason not to. So I figured, what the hell. There were 4 of us, myself, Anna, Lena, and Lena's boyfriend Koollee. Koollee
okay.
opted to drive because he had the
2
biggest
girls,
car,
2 dudes.
which was pretty chill of him. It was a long but good drive. Everyone was in a good mood. The final stretch was this long, twisting road that didn't have many houses on it. We pulled up to the house around 5 in the afternoon, and my first thought was that Lena had severely undersold it. The place was massive, right on the lake with this humongous wraparound deck and a dock that went way out over the water. It was the kind of house that makes you wonder who actually owns it. There were also way more cars in the front of the house
These
than
are
I was
some nice
expecting.
houses in these
Lena had made it
videos,
sound
by
like
the
there'd
way.
only be 15 to 20 people, but I counted at least 25 cars in the grass lot next to the house, with more
Nice
parked down the
lake
road
house.
because there wasn't room. That's where Koollee had to park.
Dark.
We walked up the front steps to see a guy standing near the front door. He seemed to be about our age, or maybe a little older. He introduced himself, but I don't remember his name, so I'll just call him the host. He seemed friendly enough, but the very first thing I clocked about him was that his speech seemed rehearsed, like he'd had this exact conversation multiple times. And to be fair, he probably had, but it still felt weird to me. You know those safety speeches frat pledges have to give before letting you into a party? It felt kind of like that. He gave us the rundown. He told us where to find our rooms, how to navigate the house, when we could do this or that. Typical house rule stuff like that. Then he brought up the car keys. He said the roads around the lake were narrow and dangerous at night, especially after people had been drinking. He told us it was a liability thing and that they were collecting everyone's keys at the door. He had this whole little speech about it. Koollee sort of shrugged it before handing his keys over. The host made a big show about thanking Koollee for playing by the rules, which I thought was kind of obnoxious. Then, he opened the door and let us in. I made a mental note of what he was doing with the car keys, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a big bowl of other car keys on the table in the foyer. The host tossed Koollee's keys into the bowl and told us to have fun before stepping back outside and closing the door. We went and found our room, which had 2 double beds and a tiny balcony that overlooked the water. We put our stuff away and went back downstairs. Lena was really eager to find her friends, so we followed her. It didn't take long to figure out where the main lounge was. It was this giant open room on the first floor that was lined with full glass windows, so you could get a wraparound view of the water. It was honestly pretty awesome. There must have been at least 30 people hanging out in that one room, but the weird thing was that Lena didn't recognize a single one of them. They all looked like college kids. Greek life people even, but Lena couldn't find her friend or anyone else she knew in the crowd. I wasn't just going to stand there in the corner, so I walked over to the fridge, grabbed a beer for myself and Koollee, and made my way over to the pool table, which no one was using. I've never had a hard time connecting with new people, so I didn't really care that we didn't know anyone.
Me neither.
Koollee didn't seem to care either. We played pool, talked, drank, and just enjoyed the vibe. Our girlfriends came over a little later and told us Lena's friend wasn't answering her phone. They seemed overly concerned about it, but Koollee and I told them it was fine. And it was fine. I'm not gonna lie, the first night was actually really fun. Koollee and I socialized with a bunch of people who were all really dope. Anna and Lena got along with the girls, and there seemed to be an unlimited supply of alcohol and games. There was one thing that was nagging at me, despite all the fun I was having. It was the host. He wasn't really partying, but was always there, walking through the rooms and occasionally talking to people.
Like
my first thought was that he was enjoying some slightly bolder substances in some back room with a select few people, but I felt like that was unlikely because I never saw a drink in his hand. At one point, I saw him standing near the back door with a clipboard, like an actual physical clipboard with paper on it, and he was writing something down. Most of the party felt like strangers getting to know each other, which is kind of what I expected. But there were maybe 8 to 10 people who interacted with each other differently. At first, I just thought a big portion of the group already knew each other, but I couldn't help but notice that some of the people who seemed familiar with each other introduced themselves during games and whatnot. As more time passed, I also realized that the 4 of us weren't merging with some bigger group that all knew each other, but rather the whole group was split into a bunch of smaller groups like ours.
Weird shit about to happen.
Besides those 10 or so people, no one knew anyone beyond the people they had pulled up with.
You see how he showed the moon?
She said I was overthinking things, which was probably true. She was also pretty wasted at that point, so I wasn't going to complicate things. Lena's friend never showed up that first night. The next morning, I woke up earlier than everyone else. I went down to the kitchen and made myself a coffee. Then I went out on the deck to sit by myself for a while. I made note of the fact that the bowl with everyone's keys wasn't by the front door anymore, which was a little odd. I wanted to be left alone, so I chose to sit on the side of the house, with the driveway to my left and the water to my right. It was actually really peaceful. Around mid-morning, I noticed a couple I'd seen the night before packing up their stuff. They said goodbye to a few people, and I watched them drive out of sight. Fast forward till later that night, and we're sitting by the bonfire. I was sitting with Anna and a few other people when I happened to glance across the fire toward the far end of the circle. There was a couple sitting together, slightly further back from the group than everyone else. They were positioned with the fire between us, which made it harder to get a clean look, but I kept watching. I realized it was the same guy and girl from earlier, the ones who had left in the morning. I was dead certain of it. I told Anna, and she gave me this confused look.
I thought they left.
She hadn't seen them leave, so she probably assumed I was misremembering things. There wasn't much I could do to convince her, so instead, I just got up and immediately made my way through the house.
It's starting.
I remembered which car was theirs, so I was going to see if it was still gone. I made it to the driveway, and to my surprise, the car wasn't there. Despite that, I was positive the people I had seen were the ones who had left, but by the time I got back to the bonfire, they were gone. I couldn't find them anywhere, and it bugged me for the rest of the night. I didn't bother telling Koollee or Lena, and every time I mentioned it to Anna, she told me I was being a psychotic buzzkill. The next morning, I made it a point to wake up really early again. I wanted to go for a walk. I'm not really sure what it was I was looking for, but I needed to convince myself that I wasn't trapped and that there was something outside that house and those people. About a quarter mile down the road, past a bend where you couldn't see anything from the house, there was an equipment shed, some kind of storage building for groundskeeping staff. I walked around it, and my jaw damn near hit the floor. It was the couple's car from the day before. I was sure of it. I just stood there. I don't know how long. I wasn't scared. It was more like confirmation of something I already knew, but I hadn't been able to prove. I turned around and walked back to the house without telling anyone. I was starting to freak out after that. Why would someone pretend to leave?
I would have been like, hey, we got it.
And I started thinking about those people they had been saying goodbye to, and I wondered if they were in on it as well. I knew what I had to do. That afternoon, I found that couple near the dock. It took me a really long time to find them, and I had to make up some bullshit excuse to tell Anna.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't even sugarcoat it. I just bluntly asked them if they had left the morning before. They both gave me a funny look and acted like I was crazy, but I could tell my question struck a nerve. I swear to God, though, it was like everyone around could hear our conversation. There weren't that many people around, but while I was standing there, everyone quieted down a little bit, and I couldn't help but feel like there were eyes on me.
Damn.
Luckily, Anna appeared out of nowhere and told me to have a drink with her. I initially wanted to press that couple, but the way everyone else reacted made me feel deeply uncomfortable in a way that's hard to describe.
Why was you loud?
I told Anna everything.
Like, what the heck?
She actually took me seriously when I brought up the car detail. Then she went on to tell me that she had picked up on some weird stuff herself, like some of the girls having almost identical backstories and stuff like that. I suggested leaving early, but she told me that was probably premature. Either way, the bad feeling I had gotten the first day was getting worse and worse. By the time I woke up the next morning, I made the decision that we were leaving. Anna agreed. Koollee and Lena were a different story. Koollee straight up laughed at me. He said he wasn't cutting the trip short because I had a theory. Lena admitted it was weird that her friend had basically ghosted her and that she didn't recognize a single person in the house, but she wasn't ready to panic over a parked car. We argued about it for a little, and I was actually stunned by how stubborn they were both being. It's not like Anna and I could have left on our own.
There you go.
We needed Koollee's car. We ended up compromising, and the plan was to stay one final night. I was cool with that until we went downstairs for breakfast. Every single set of eyes was on me. I felt it, and I didn't like it. It wasn't obvious, and I tried convincing myself I was just having a paranoid freakout, but people were definitely looking at me. A lot of people, which I found incredibly off-putting because most of the people that were looking at me hadn't even been part of the group that had seen me question that couple. I started feeling like something really, really terrible was going to happen if we stayed in that house for even a moment more. Anna felt the eyes too, because she whispered to me that people were looking. I got up from where we were sitting and walked right over to the host, who was standing near the corner of the room. I told him we had to take off and that I needed my keys. He smiled like a fucking robot, then asked if everything was okay. I told him something came up and we needed to head home, to which he actually asked, what happened? I hadn't thought of a fake excuse, so I just told him it was a family emergency. He kept diverting the conversation, saying things like some people had planned a boat thing for the evening, and that the nights always get better as the end of the week approaches. He was doing everything he could to get me to stay, all while still smiling at me like a freak. I didn't care. I told him again that I needed the keys. I cannot verbally explain how awful that feeling was. There was a room full of at least 20 people, and every single one of them was staring at me. The host didn't respond, and his Mr. Charming Guy act was gone. He wasn't smiling anymore. He gave this blank, dead-eyed look that creeped me out. Some random girl who was sitting nearby broke the silence by saying, "That's not a good idea." I turned around to look at her, and she was scowling at me. I didn't know what to say. I looked across the room and saw Anna, Lena, and Koollee, and they all looked horrified. The host finally said, "Okay, fine," or something like that, and told me to follow him inside. I saw Anna getting up to follow me, but when he saw her move, he put his hand out and said no in a loud, aggressive way that genuinely startled me. It was almost violent. He told me that only I was to follow him, so that's what I did. He led me through a maze of hallways before we reached the room with everyone's keys hanging on hooks. He didn't even ask me which set was mine. He just picked them out because he clearly already knew.
Oh yeah.
I thought he was going to attack me or withhold the keys.
They was going to eat y'all.
Them to me. Then he said,
they was going to eat y'all.
I didn't give a shit. As soon as I had the keys in my hand, I made my way back over to my group. When I got back to that main room, the music was back on and people were laughing and talking again, like nothing had happened. It was freaky. Anna, Koollee, and Lena were in the same spot, and I told them we were going. We were packed and out of there in 10 minutes. The entire time, I felt like someone was going to try and stop us.
Yeah, that was a
No
setup.
one did.
That was a setup.
As Koollee started driving off,
they was going to eat
looked
y'all,
back at
bro.
the house to see the most unsettling thing yet. There were about a dozen people standing on the deck, watching us leave.
If y'all would have went on
They
the
were
boat
standing in a
trip,
line,
you wouldn't
not
have came
talking.
back from the
It was
boat trip.
very obvious they were watching us.
You wouldn't have
I
came
noticed
back
a couple
from the
more
boat
people
trip.
looking through the windows, which pretty much
They would have
confirmed
took
what I
the
had been
organs they
suspecting
needed,
all along.
and y'all
There
bodies
was
would have
something
been
up
for
with that
the
fucking house.
sharks.
For the rest
For
of the
real.
break,
Oh
I
my
tried getting in
God.
touch with.
Bruh. They would have died if they stayed another night, bruh. Or if they would have stayed that full day, because I guess, I don't know if they was going on the boat trip that day or, you know, whatever, but they would have died. For sure. For sure. They would have, something would have happened. If y'all enjoyed this video, make sure y'all hit that like button, subscribe to the channel.
Are you subscribed?
If y'all want to talk about these stories, let me know in the comment section. I'm here for it. Cause that third one, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.
Yeah, I throw myself no back, you can just keep it love, I'm cool with it. Try to let them in, they backing up, they say can't handle it. Just give me some time, I made this shit. She said she need my heart, so why she down the shit? Yeah. That's how the game slide. Yeah, sitting there for the cool, that's how the game slide. Yeah, sitting there for the. I got a bad bitch on me, yeah, sitting there for the. Yeah, sitting there for the cool, that's how the game we slide. Yeah, bad bitch on my line, she getting too wet beside it. Yeah, pussy function, I got a game beside me. Yeah, said I be making her mad, she getting too red like Target. I just can't get my mama off me. Said she want more than she lost with me. We can go back for man, we doing it.
Keep it cool.
Keep it classy.
And we love you.
Stay awesome.
Always.
And forever.